example, and yet, and the RIBA do say out, you know, that you have different options, but it's still largely based on your portfolio. And if we're talking about 1% and 99%, but you don't agree, I mean, I love what Dan does, but you don't spend your days normally doing that. Maybe the focus should be taken slightly away, so it's not 60% portfolio, or whatever it is at the moment. It should be more acoustics or more lighting, or so that there are other options to go to, and it's more obvious, because it's great saying that there are other options, but unless the schools actually do promote it within their lessons, then you won't get people thinking that way. And another point about fees, just slightly, I don't want to mention minimum wage. I don't know how many people know that the RIBA did actually say that you can't log work experience if you're not being paid minimum wage as of July of this year.
Right.
But I don't know how many practices actually follow that.
Just a show. Thank you very much. I'd like to, yes, Paul would like to respond to that.
Can I say, can I ask why the ARB are not tasked with any possibility of changing their mode of operation? Because one of the things they could do immediately is offer an alternative to the Part 3 qualification, which the Architect Act actually asks for, and they don't provide this alternative.
Are you talking about practice-based
Well,
exam?
there is no different from what that alternative could be, but if you look, for example, at what Ireland have just gone through, they offer 8 different ways to register as an architect. And one of those ways that you can register in Ireland as an architect is without any academic qualification at all. So if the ARB were to introduce, that may not be what the ARB would want to introduce, but why aren't there alternatives to the Part 3 qualification? That is something the ARB could do. And it seems to me that the focus should be directed towards the ARB rather than the RIBA, because they are, let's say, the ones with the power to make the changes.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were talking about tying all this in with EU legislation. And for instance, I have to be careful here because I'm obviously Irish, but if you can get qualified in Ireland without a qualification and you end up in London and these are the people without qualifications designing the built environment, I mean, would you be happy with that if it's an overall European thing?
I wonder if things have become slightly confused, but I don't think that in Ireland you can qualify without any sort of qualification. You obviously have to have a work-based assessment, and I think that possibly this is, which actually the ARB and the RIBA offer in this country. You can do a work-based exam for people who've been working. They can take an exam for Part 1 and Part 2.
Yes, but not Part 3. There's no alternative to Part 3. And I don't want to get bogged down in detail. It is too much detail.
Yeah.
The principle is that the ARB hold the power. They should be tasked with something that this forum comes up with, rather than just the ARB.
Well, we certainly put it to the vote for the floor. I'd just like to call for any final suggestions or burning points, because we'd quite like to sort of start wrapping things up, maybe get some voting on what we think are the most important things that have been suggested today.
No, I think, can I say one more thing about diversification and having other skill sets? I'm doing my Part 3 at the moment, and I agree with the young lady over there that some of the things you learn on your Part 3 is far beyond what you would have learned on your Part 2. I now run my own business, so PI-wise, I know how not to get sued, hopefully, fingers crossed. So I think the diversity of skills when you're studying is fantastic, but I think you have to have the skill sets to be able to go out into the built environment and effectively build people's extensions. And I just think that the PI implications of that, I think, just have to be borne in mind. But there's something that you get on the Part 3 course about how to protect yourself within that. That I think, if from a fresh Part 2 grad going out taking on building commissions, I think that's, I don't know, be up to the client to decide if they want to employ that person.
I don't know whether you and Alba, are you suggesting that maybe some of those things should be taught in part 2 as well?
If you are going
Right.
to say that part 2 is a qualification in its own merit and you're going to disregard part 3, I say definitely.
Right. Okay, so then let's have that as one of our
Yes.
suggestions.
Maybe a reshuffle of the curriculum notes in part 1 and 2, which I enjoyed completely, but I do agree with the lay that the items in part 3 are critical to thinking about.
I have a question for Robert and Jeremy. You guys are heavily involved in education, and you're figureheads or leaders of certain schools. I'm wondering, it sounds like you've got good ideas and good opinions, but how much of that are you allowed to implement, or do you feel governed by bureaucracy that you can't implement what you want to implement? And if so, who are that bureaucracy? Is it ARB, RIBA? Who is it?
Well, Robert and I work in a very particular sector of part of the university sector, in which in Robert's University there are more black and minority ethnic students than the whole of the Russell Group. So that we are going to have to be moving much more quickly. So basically what's going to happen under the new system is there's going to be an establishment of the status quo through one set of universities, another set of universities who are going to have to move very quickly. At that stage, what we suggest in terms of the future of our particular courses, I think has as much sway as anyone else. So I don't think we're ruled by bureaucracy. There are ways even around the 5-year thing that it's not defined through time in the European thing, it's defined through credit, so you can accelerate courses. I think that in order to survive in the very competitive sector which we're up against, we're going to have to change. So I think there is scope for change.
Does anyone else have any burning questions or points they'd like to make?
Yeah, I would make one point. It's on. I mean, what always dogs these conversations is the, I suppose, quite understandable inability of education, practice and students to act collectively to make anything happen. I mean, maybe that's intrinsic within the fact that we're trained into a competitive mindset. I think this event is quite extraordinary, and I think coming out of this, there should be very, very precise challenges. Why don't we say to the RIBA, strike anybody off who doesn't pay the minimum wage? It has to be measurable, aggressive and precise what is required, because the moments at which we act together are so rare, and they're becoming rarer as competition becomes more fierce in a diminishing market.
I think there's one question down the back.
Sorry, this is a very quick one. There was a comment made a moment ago about the need to do part 3 or for certain elements of part 3 education to be introduced into part 2 for things like building extension. I think this touches on the point that was made, that Jeremy made about the 99% or 1%. There are an awful lot of buildings and extensions that get built by people with no architectural qualifications whatsoever. Don't really think it's relevant to say, oh, you need this for doing this or this for doing that. The important point here is what our education enables us to do and what we want us to do, and really what society thinks it's worth. Because that's a lot of the issues that keep coming up here over and over again is, well, how much should we be paid? Should it be the minimum wage? Should it be this? Should it be that? At the end of the day, the market system that we're in, whether it's working or not, we get paid what people think what we do is worth. My question would be really, I guess, what does the panel think we can do to address that issue of kind of convince society of the value of what we can do? Because at the moment, I can't see any kind of change to that situation.
Okay.
Well, again, I think it does come down to the way in which how we communicate what we do, and looking at these beautiful photographs on the wall, that probably the photographs themselves cost as much as some year-out students earn in a whole year, and of course the buildings don't look